Epic Games has just gone absolutely nuclear and sent shockwaves through the entire tech industry. I can't say, and honestly no one can, as of right now where it all leads, but what I can do is analyze what has already occurred to the best of my ability. Small disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. I'm definitely not a lawyer. However, despite being slightly slower on the draw for this particular topic, I believe it will allow me to include some additional context and information about this monumental series of events, which will better provide an explanation as to why Epic Games has just enacted a digital and litigatory equivalent to Blitzkrieg right now against two of the planet's largest tech giants. The basic chain of events took place as follows. A couple of days ago, Epic Games enacted a new purchasing option in their Android and iOS applications, which offered a direct payment method to Epic Games themselves, in addition to the standard in-app payment funnel that utilizes Apple and Google's framework, respectively. This is a violation of the existing TOS. Without any dispute, it is, and they were promptly banned by both Apple and Google, which saw the Fortnite app removed from their official store pages. Within literal hours, Epic Games filed a lawsuit which is about 60 pages long against Apple, soon to be followed by a near identical document aimed at Google as well, and this attack was crafted by two of the best law firms in the entire United States, one of which is quite literally the #1 ranked law firm in the entire country. Two things can be gleaned from this basic timeline. One, Epic Games was ready with the lawsuit well in advance of the Fortnite termination. They prepared for this extensively. And two, they deliberately forced Apple and Google to ban the app, thereby walking them face first into a fully prepared and extensive lawsuit with highly obvious ulterior motives. In the days since, coverage has absolutely exploded, but it has been rife with speculation and reactionary discussion. Widespread common perception is that this is about the 30% premium that Apple and Google harvest from in-store transactions, because Epic Games has put their mind towards retaining a greater share of the profit, obviously. This might be partially true, I think, but it's not the main goal. It definitely isn't. The main goal is far more important and much more impactful than a simple retention of basic profit. And if successful, Epic Games may have just changed the entire app industry forever with one swift and simple maneuver. To understand the true motivation, we have to read the actual lawsuit itself, examine the response by Apple and Google, the retaliatory social media postings by Tim Sweeney, and a few other items as well. The 60-page legal document is too long to actually read in full, and I will link it down below for anyone who's interested, but there are a couple critical segments we have to highlight. The most important paragraph by far is as follows. Accordingly, Epic seeks injunctive relief in court to end Apple's unreasonable and unlawful practices. Apple's conduct has caused and continues to cause Epic financial harm, but as noted above, Epic is not bringing this case to recover these damages. Epic is not seeking any monetary damages. Instead, Epic seeks to end Apple's dominance over key technology markets, open up the space for progress and ingenuity, and ensure that Apple mobile devices are open to the same competition as Apple's personal computers. As such, Epic respectfully requests this court to enjoin Apple from continuing to impose its anti-competitive restrictions on the iOS ecosystem and ensure 2020 is not like 1984. This makes the mission rather clear and also contradicts what a significant portion of the gaming population currently believes to be the motivation. Epic Games wants to disrupt the monopoly that Apple holds over iOS App Store purchasing, and is not seeking damages, quote unquote, on behalf of themselves, which effectively positions them as the champion of the people by tearing down the oppressive 30% revenue harvest that Apple takes from every participating developer. That position is brutally shallow, but also kind of incredibly intelligent. Epic Games is not doing this for the benefit of the customer. They do this for the benefit of themselves, obviously, while an outward-facing marketing tactic is deployed to position themselves as favorable to the massive existing Fortnite audience and as much of the broader App Store user base as they possibly can. The goal behind this lawsuit is to destroy Apple and Google's joint monopoly, and to do this, they prepared, extensively I might add, and then led their competition, because that is how they view these two companies right now, as future competition, but more on that later on. They led their future competition right into this lawsuit. They got Fortnite banned on purpose, fully and completely, to kick into motion a legal plea for the government to brutalize their competitors. The rest of the lawsuit goes on to explain why they believe that Apple and Google are unprecedented monopolies that must be broken up by authoritative intervention because they stifle the creativity and competition of the App Store marketplace. All of it is framed in a way so as to be benevolent and noble, with numerous references to George Orwell's 1984, a famous dystopian novel about omnipresent governmental control, while simultaneously pleading with the government to break up this oppressive control monopoly that their soon-to-be competition currently have. They went so far as to release a parody propaganda video to their audience in conjunction with this lawsuit, which mimics Apple's own advertising from decades ago, in which they painted their competitor, IBM at the time, as a monopoly and positioned themselves as the underdog, the people's champion, and the righteous hero. But if you look at this through any objective lens, it really isn't so simple. Metaphorically, Epic Games is like a child on the playground, and Google, as well as Apple, are much bigger children on the same playground. Epic gets up, goes over, and pokes Apple and Google with a stick until they get punched in the face, and then runs to the teacher screaming, "They punched me in the face, now you have to punish them." Epic crafted this entire scenario so that the US government will damage their competition, because it is their goal to transition into the App Store marketplace industry, much the same way that they did with the existing Epic Store versus Steam. The one problem is that Steam and Apple/Google are entirely different creatures. Epic was able to steal a user base from Steam through exclusivity deals. More on the hypocrisy of that later on. But for Android and iOS App Store purchasing, they have a harder battle ahead, to be sure. Epic has absolutely no right whatsoever to accept direct payments, and they have no right to the audience and user base of these devices while utilizing their stores, that being iPhone and Android. Epic knows this, but they desperately want to be a big boy. In fact, if we look at their Trello roadmap, their goal of entering the App Store is completely obvious. Up next and future development list direct carrier billing and Android Store, because their entrance into the mobile marketplace has been under construction already for quite some time. The same way they entered the publisher distribution space on PC, they will enter the mobile industry. But unlike PC, the mobile space is not quite as accessible. Here's the thing, their argument, at least in my opinion, and again, I'm not a lawyer, so take this with a grain of salt, but it falls flat on its face and skids across the pavement on its bare face. Because this is not about benefiting the customer. The customer might benefit, and they will likely receive a discount of sorts if the 30% revenue cut is eliminated or drastically reduced at least. But the goal here is to financially harm their competition as much as possible and destroy their existing grip on market share. Except there are a few key problems. For starters, this lawsuit is levied against Apple and Google. According to IDC, the existing App Store market share for these companies is not equal. On the contrary, Google is about 86.1% of the available user base, while Apple has about 14%. Apple is not an open source platform. Therefore, the argument that they maintain a monopoly of sorts over the distribution of apps and the payment authorization within their phone on their marketplace, in a way, is kind of accurate, but the same is not true for Google. Google hosts an open platform, and direct from the Android developer website, we can read the following: alternative distribution options. As an open platform, Android offers choice. You can distribute your Android apps to users in any way you want, using any distribution approach or combination of approaches that meets your needs. From publishing in an app marketplace to serving your apps from a website or emailing them directly to users, you're never locked into any particular distribution platform. The process for building and packaging your apps for distribution is the same regardless of how you distribute them. This saves you time and lets you automate parts of the process as needed. You can read Preparing for Release for more information. The sections below highlight some of the alternatives for distributing your apps. Distributing through an app marketplace. Usually, to reach the broadest possible audience, you distribute your apps through a marketplace such as Google Play. Google Play is the premier marketplace for Android apps and is particularly useful if you want to distribute your apps to a larger global audience. However, you can distribute your apps through any app marketplace you want or use multiple marketplaces. Unlike other forms of distribution, Google Play allows you to use the in-app billing service and licensing service. The in-app billing service makes it easy to sell in-app products like game jewels or app feature upgrades. The licensing service helps prevent unauthorized installation and use of your apps. This totally undermines their case against Google, and by default, also kind of their case against Apple, because a 1984 level of control over the user base does not look as good when 86% of the market is actually competitively open, while 14% has its own hardware, its own software, a precisely articulated terms of service agreement, and you clearly violated those exact terms on purpose to launch a lawsuit against your future competitors. Epic wants the government to come in with a sledgehammer and smash the face of its soon-to-be peers. That's not noble, and it might work for them, it honestly might, though I find it hard to believe, but it's not some benevolent goal of helping the customer. It is simply a smash-and-grab tactic to enter with more force and acquire a greater market share in the turmoil while harvesting more profit in the process. Epic wants to sell their apps on their own store while also having them be available on their competitors' stores without having to pay their competitors the long-standing fee to utilize the actual marketplace. And all of this forgets one key thing. 40% of Epic Games is owned by Tencent. I find it incredibly hilarious that this company will repeatedly invoke the name of George Orwell and a dystopian, authoritarian, governmental world, while almost half of their company is owned by a propagandist and technology arm of the Chinese Communist Party. Furthermore, we need to examine contextually what the United States really looks like right now, because recently there have been extensive executive actions taken against Tencent specifically. The current administration has been barring certain Tencent-controlled apps, cutting off financial ties to that company for others, and when antitrust, anti-monopoly lawsuits are brought before a court, under current circumstances that is, that sees a partially owned Tencent subsidiary attempting to destroy the market share control of two American competitors, what do we really think the result is going to be? Maybe they win, who knows? Again, I'm not a lawyer. Epic Games even has the former Assistant Attorney General of the Antitrust Division under the Obama administration on the case, Christine Varney. That's no small thing, but if you examine the entire scope of events in context, it is a totally different creature compared to what current public perception dictates. Epic Games wants to enter the app space. They deliberately violated the terms of service on two major existing platform stores, iOS and Android. They prepared a massive lawsuit to enact as soon as their app is banned for their deliberate violation of agreed upon terms of service. They attempt to weaponize their fans and the government against competitors with claims of dystopian authority and monopolistic oppression. Meanwhile, 86% of that market is actually open and only 14% isn't, but that 14% is controlled by a company under their own hardware that they manufacture, their own software that they create, and all of that is their own proprietary infrastructure. Meanwhile, Epic Games, in a climate of anti-Chinese tech interference, harsher than almost ever before in history, is 40% owned by Tencent, which is closer to a phantom of 1984 oppression than Apple or Google have ever been and likely ever will be. I'm not a fan of Apple and Google. They have a lot of power, some would say far too much, and they do not consistently use that power for righteous reasons, but Epic Games is not better. They've effectively launched a blitzkrieg against Apple and Google, owing to their dismissal of personal damages. The fact that they do not have to argue financial harm and specific sums will speed up this case tremendously. And much like an actual war, when the fighting really began, other tech giants declared sides. Spotify and Match Group both announced support for Epic almost immediately, with Spotify being a music giant who has contended with Apple's high fees for many years, and Match Group being the puppet master behind dating apps like Tinder and many others, which all have in-app purchasing options which would probably become much more profitable with any reduction at all in the 30% marketplace fees. Epic seems to be fighting on two different fronts, the front of public opinion and the legal front as well, but Google and Apple have the high ground. And Epic, contrary to the outward-facing image that they are projecting right now, is not in this for the customer. They are in it for themselves. The player base just so happens to benefit from a PR tactic that they cooked up while undermining their competition. But even then, let's say that they lose. The player base will have been locked out of the mobile Fortnite game for who knows how long, because of a deliberate violation of TOS agreements, while Epic tried to get Big Daddy government to come spank their competition for not giving them half the sandbox. I find it unbelievably hard to side with Epic in all this. 80% of the market is already open via Google. And yeah, you'll have to work very hard and very long to get your user adoption of new storefronts off the ground, but it's not an Orwellian-controlled authority of oppression on the platform. And the other 14% is hardware and software from a specific company, and Epic wants to say, no, I don't like it. Make them allow us to compete with them on their device that they made on their operating system because we want to and we deserve it. Epic is a spoiled, petulant child who wants more of their siblings' Halloween candy, so they steal some, and then when they get their ass beat to a pulp, they cry to the parents. I have disagreements with Google and Apple, to be sure. I'm pretty sure everyone does. They do a whole bunch of unethical things, but Epic isn't better. They are worse. They are a wolf in sheep's clothing right now, and while a section of the community revels in the idea of these three major companies duking it out on a public stage, I fear for the stability of the app marketplace long term. There are many different ways to frame all this. It's a monumental event in the space, possibly one of the largest individual cases to exist in many years. But knowing that the real goal of Epic Games has very, very little to do with the high platform fees and much more to do with disrupting their competitors so they can just supplant them in the space, it becomes harder for me to look through any other prism than Epic being a spoiled little brat of a company who wants the government to carve up the pie for them and just give them a bigger piece that they do not currently deserve. I am not on the side of Apple and Google specifically, but I am definitely not on the side of Epic Games. Truth be told, I kind of hope they all lose, but that's it. If you want to support, please check out locals.com. It's the place I interact with the community most often now, and I'll post extra scripts there, content polls, and eventually credits of supporters at the end of each individual video. Also, other links down below, merchandise, Twitter, and another gaming YouTuber to support, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.